All right, so it's the moment we've been waiting for as we get into that all-important conversation concerning the current state of affairs. And we all know that sometime in March, as has been put out there, we're going to hear about the state of the nation, the president delivering that. But let's get into the studio and find out what a former deputy minister of information, Felix Kwakye Ofosu, thinks about the state of the nation currently. Felix, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation. Right. So we're going to have enough time to talk about the economy, the E-levy, and all of that. But let's just start, segue neatly from the last bit we were talking about, which has to do with the NPP's elections right at the grassroots and the picking of nomination forms for polling stations. From where you sit, of course, you are on the other side of the political spectrum. What picture does this paint? The sort of scenes we've seen, the fighting, the supposed hoarding of forms, the national chairman stepping in. What does that reveal to you?
Well, it paints a picture of a party in total disarray.
A party in total disarray?
Absolutely. Look, hiccups and hitches are not unusual in a grand activity like that. We are talking about tens of thousands of polling station executives who are to be elected. So it is not unusual that you have one or two instances of difficulties or hitches. But what we saw yesterday was a manifestation of a party that is very poorly managed. It is a very mundane, routine, regular activity, selling forms to prospective polling station aspirants. It's been done over and over and over and over again. It is the most basic activity that takes place within the electoral cycle of every party. And so I am quite frankly surprised that in this day and age, we should witness the chaotic scenes that we witnessed yesterday and the day before. Now, there have been instances where people have actually pulled guns and threatened to shoot others because they...
You're speaking of Kede in the eastern region.
Kede, yes. I've seen videos from Mampong. I've seen videos from Asante Achem. I've seen videos from elsewhere. And it pains of it.
Where people used weapons in all these places.
Yes, there's in the Kede instance, someone could be seen brandishing a gun,
right,
and others were daring him to fire upon them. I saw the MP for Menchia North, I think, being hooted at because he was accused of having hoarded some nomination forms. So it speaks about a party that clearly is in disarray, that is very badly managed, and does not appear to have learned lessons from the huge losses that they incurred, at least in the parliamentary elections in the 2020 polls. And it for me sums up what we are going through as a country. It does not appear that the MPP is taking the business of running the country seriously enough, so that it has extended to their party. Their national chairman was compelled to come out yesterday to issue some directives.
Was that not the right thing to do as someone in charge of the party, the leader of the party?
But it would not have been necessary if the important things were done. It is not that some elements outside of the party have stepped in to influence the process. These are key figures of the NPP who apparently appear to have a vested interest in who gets elected as a police station executive, I beg your pardon, who have decided that they will hijack the process and rig it in their favor. And that is what has resulted in the melee that you have highlighted. So there's an inherent desire by people in the party to cheat their way to some positions. And that is what is resulting in this backlash. But I think that it paints a picture of a party that is on its way to opposition. They don't appear willing to do the things that are necessary to build a strong party. You see the same level of confusion even within their parliamentary ranks. Now we are grappling with a situation where even members of the MPP parliamentary wing have accused their colleagues of deliberately sabotaging government, not interested in helping government pass its own flagship tax policy.
Right.
So all is not well for the MPP. And if I was a supporter of the party, I'll be deeply, deeply worried.
We'll get there. But at the polling level and the sort of things that you say, that this depicts, and not to quote you, but suggestively that the party is in shambles, it's in disarray and all of that. These are not, you started by saying that these scenes are not unique to the NPP. We've seen them at your end as well.
But we've never seen...
Just to make the point, we've seen them in the NDC as well, even at the grassroots levels. And your own party members have complained about how that could impact the fortunes of your party. And in the past, we've seen exactly that play out. The other point to note is that there are so many thousands, over 30,000, 38,000 if I hear, of these polling stations across the country. If you even have these in, let's say, 20 of all those we've heard, 10, 15, 20, does that create a general situation of, panic or chaos in the NPP? I mean, if you look at the statistic, out of close to 40,000, if you're seeing such scenes in 20 polling stations, how do you go off saying that means the party is in total disarray?
Well, I started off by saying that a little hitch or hiccup in a major activity like that is not unusual. So it is a concession that even in the NDC, you have instances where there's genuine confusion about the process because of something that was not put in place, which should actually have been put in place to facilitate the process. But what we are seeing in the MPP, as far as this is concerned, is not genuine confusion arising out of some hitch. There's a deliberate effort by some people to hamstring the process and skew it in their favor. And the incidents are not isolated. We've seen it in Ningo Pram Pram. We've seen it, but the bulk of the disagreements have arisen in the Ashanti region and the Eastern region. And these are supposed to be the strongholds of the MPP. So if in the places where you are strongest, you are having this level of discontent among the grassroots activists of your party because they feel that the process is being skewed in favor of powerful people, then there's a major difficulty. So any party that is interested in organizing properly and ensuring that they are able to maintain their momentum and go into election and win would not take such chances. But to the extent that the leadership of the MPP has been derelict and they did not put in place the proper structures, because you see, this is not the first time that they are going to hold polling station elections. And I'm sure it's the first time that you are hearing this extent of confusion. Because polling station elections sometimes hardly get heard of because they pass without incident because they are very regular activities. Right. And even within the MPP, this is the very first time that we are seeing this extent of confusion. So it is on that basis that I am criticizing the management and handling of the affairs of the MPP by the current leadership. It does not appear that they are up to the task. And they are displaying a level of incompetence that is unbecoming of people managing such a big party.
Are you learning any lessons from this? I mean, it said that when you see your neighbor's beard on
fire, of course. Even
you have to go through the same process.
Of course. But
are you learning lessons?
Of course, but we have done this over and over and over again. We will be doing it sometime during the course of this year. We do not anticipate these problems. That is not to say that you will not have a hitch or two. But if a hitch arises, it should be due to genuine difficulties, not because somebody stepped in and wanted to skew the process. But more importantly for the MPP, given what befell them in the 2020 elections, you would have thought that they would learn lessons. It is because of these disagreements that they lost many seats across the country, so that their parliamentary majority was whittled down from 169 members to 137 members with an independent candidate. There were places where you would close your eyes and predict an MPP victory, and yet they lost because the leadership of the party failed to handle things in a fair and transparent manner. And people felt aggrieved and protested by the way they voted. So we definitely will do things much better. It doesn't mean that you won't find a hitch or two, but we will not put in place a system that is heavily skewed towards some interest within the party.
Let's talk generally now about the performance of the Nana Addo Dankwa administration in its second term. And it's been quite eventful. I mean, on the back of COVID, on the back of the new dynamics we see in our world currently, there's a whole lot to talk about. But before we break them down to the bread and butter issues, what would be your brief assessment of the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo Addo administration in this second term, a year and a few months?
Well, as you may be aware, I'm a long-standing critic of President Akufo Addo. I did not expect that he would perform creditably based on what I knew and what the evidence pointed to. But even I have been left shocked at how poor he has been as a leader. And you see, the problems have not arisen only in the second term. They have been there ever since he took office, except that perhaps they have been more pronounced now because some realities have come to play. They have failed to impress. They have flattered to deceive. They have mismanaged the affairs of the country such that now we are virtually on our knees. Our economy is in complete shambles. There's widespread suffering, there's pain, there's anguish, there's anxiety, there are economic hardships. There's hardly any sector that is being properly managed. On a daily basis, we have to wake up to fuel price adjustments. Only yesterday, I learned from some traders in the business district that some items that they purchase on wholesale basis and sell have been increased by about 15%. Only yesterday, there was the announcement by the transport unions that come Saturday, transport fares are going up by 15%.
15%. Right.
And so you see that there is general gloom. There's a pall of hopelessness hanging around or over the country. And it arises directly from the very poor leadership of President Akufo Addo and his government. So yes, you could say that.
Before you continue, because yes, I said that we should focus on the second term. Yes. But are you insinuating that it's been all wrong? We've gone downhill throughout the Akufo Addo administration. You say you are a long-time critic,
yes.
But the first term, for example, we made a lot of economic gains. The GDP, the dynamics of our economy in terms of inflation rates, in terms of how much we were raking in at the end of a year. We were in a pretty solid place, weren't we? Economically speaking. And there are other things that have been done in terms of infrastructure and others. Are you saying that you didn't see any of that, the digitization, and digitalization? You didn't see any of that in the first term? For which reason you think it was all, bad?
Well, I'm not sure of any exceptional digitalization or digitization, whatever it is that they choose to call it, that has taken place. That is
there's the Ghana card that has now become efficient. It's been linked to our TIN. There's a SNIT.
Yeah, the Ghana card process
as well.
The Ghana card process.
The SIM card re-registration.
Yes, the Ghana card process predates the Akufo Addo government. But the point is that
but they executed it.
Well, I'm saying that they
with 88% coverage now.
They came to meet a process. It started under the Akufo administration. You could even argue that the system that allowed that to begin even predated the Akufo administration. So what we have now is a culmination. But the difficulties we are facing now stem from the decisions they made in their first term. It was not the case that they did anything extraordinary to the economy. As far back as 2016, after we took some corrective measures to address the economic difficulties of the time, it had been known that our economy was going to grow in leaps and bounds. Indeed, the World Bank, the IMF, all major international financial institutions predicted that we were going to grow in excess of about 8% going forward. But when the policies of the Akufo Addo government kicked in, you saw a downward trend, leading to the recording of the lowest growth rate ever in our history of 0.4% in 2020. In 2021, it wasn't any significant growth that we recorded. This year, we won't record any significant growth either. But look at the problems that have arisen. We've become totally bankrupt as a country. We are broke. Our debt is unsustainable. There's no way we can pay it if we continue to go through the motions as we are doing. Our deficit is unheard of. The exchange rate has taken a tumble. The price of goods and services are rising. Unemployment is at an unprecedented high. People are suffering. They can't make ends meet. The president himself says he is anxious, he is anguished. The one who we have elected to solve the problem is also lamenting the problem. So you see a general state of mismanagement, of hopelessness that is attending the performance of the Akufo Addo administration. So it is not only the second term that we've had these problems. The problems started a long time ago. As I speak to you, there is such a severe cash crunch that there's not one sector that is performing properly. Go to the education sector. Basic things like providing textbooks for basic students have been in arrears for 3 academic years. The most basic payments at the basic level, the capitation grant, is also in arrears for about 2 or 3 tranches. You go to the colleges of education. Indeed, the whole of last year, they were in school for just 3 months out of a possible 9 months because government could not remit monies to the schools for the principals to run those schools. Even the much vaunted free SHS is in disarray. Only a day or 2 ago, NAT came out and said that government should make good its commitments as far as payments for feeding are concerned. CHAS earlier on had
yes, but we've heard from the PRO for the
but we've had these excuses.
The Ghana education.
We've had these excuses.
We've made it categorical that
we've had these excuses.
To be fair, whether it's the buffer stock or it's payments from government, it is clear that the government will always be in arrears at a point. And it was same under your tenure.
Now
you had similar incidents under your tenure. You can't run away from it.
We set up the buffer stock company. As I speak, I hear that they owe as much as 300 million Ghana cedis.
130 million was paid over the weekend.
Well, 300 million Ghana cedis. 130 million is
just on Friday.
Well, it's not even half of the amount. So the debt overhang still persists. The District Assembly's Common Fund, they have been in arrears for 4 tranches. Indeed, we are told that the District Assemblies have been asked to go and borrow money to cater for their needs, pending release of funds from government. Contractors are owed over 8 billion Ghana cedis, and that is just road contractors. Fertilizer suppliers.
It's not just from the Akufo Addo tenure. It feeds from your tenure, the John Mahama tenure, into this one.
We did not have as much debt as the Akufo Addo government has accumulated. Fertilizer suppliers are owed hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis. So there's a severe, even NAPCO recruits are owed several months arrears, compelling them to demonstrate sometime last week.
They should have been cut off, but there are moves to reclaim them. Is that not a good thing?
Why? As we speak, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen to them. And who, in his right senses, sets up a scheme that runs for only 3 years? After 3 years, what should the recruits do? So clearly, there's a huge problem with the management of this country as far as the Akufo Addo government is concerned. They have not been up to task. They have been an appalling failure. Now look at broader issues of governance. Look at the security situation that we have. You have a situation where government itself is at the forefront of abusing the rights of its citizens. People commit crime with impunity. I mean, you in the media, I'm sure, are sitting on tenterhooks now. You have a situation where, based on what you say, if you say something that even turns out to be misleading, you could end up in court with the potential to go to prison.
But that there are not laws, specific
laws.
Well,
but those are bogus laws. Well, apartheid was a law until some public-spirited individuals got rid of it. Indeed, President Akufo Addo, the criminal libel law was also law, was it not? Did he not shout from the rafters that he detested it and had it repealed as Attorney General? So how come that he's happy with a law that criminalizes falsehood? So clearly, let's
stay there a bit. Let's stay there a bit.
Sure.
It's interesting that you bring that up. Publication of false news, it is within our law books, and it has its own consequences, legally speaking. It's not the administration, technically. I mean, if you look at the arrests, Bobiansa, is it Oheneba, the one who was recently released, the Power FM gentleman. If you look at Oliver Barker-Vumo and his statements, if you look at Mensa Thompson, it's the police picking up these people. So where lies your allegation or your displeasure?
Well,
is it with, and I know the police is part of the executive, but is it with government or is it with the Ghana Police Service? Because some have targeted the police service and said that the IGP is being too boisterous on this.
Well, I mean,
so where lies your?
First of all, the case that sent Oheneba to prison was initiated by the President's Attorney General. So there's no dispute as to where what he said related to the President. And the President took exception and had his Attorney General file contempt charges against him, which made him go to prison for 14 days. If in this day and age, somebody can go to prison for 2 weeks for saying something that the President believes is untrue, then we are in serious trouble. The matter relating to Bobiansa revolves around something that he said about the First Lady and the wife of the Vice President. In any serious jurisdiction, investigative bodies would have moved into ascertaining whether or not indeed the First Lady and the wife of the Vice President had abused their positions to do anything irregular. But in Ghana, we are actually targeting the journalists for potential imprisonment. Asepa, what did he really say? He says that the President's relatives, daughters, if you like, family, used the presidential aircraft over the Christmas period. How in the world does this raise a situation where you put
he came out to apologize?
Yes, so he came out to apologize. So why then do you arraign him before court with the potential to imprison him? Now, the president himself, in the period that he was campaigning to be president, he said many things that I know to be
the law also has different aspects, apart from punitive aspects.
But whatever
it also has aspects to prevent, forestall similar incidents. So when these people go through some of these, maybe it might prevent others from doing that.
You see, we cannot criminalize speech. People cannot go to jail because they said something that was untrue. If that principle was ever applied to President Akufo Addo, who is applying it now, he would not have been president. He would have ended up in jail. Because I know for a fact that at least on 3 or 4 occasions, he said things that were absolutely false. One of them was that he said President Mahama had printed diaries to the tune of $10 million. If this law was applied to him, he wouldn't be president. He would be in jail. So I'm not sure that we as a people should countenance this sort of behavior. But you see, it stems from the president's posturing. Here is a president who has not cared that 8 Ghanaians were gunned down in the course of elections. He has not even publicly commented on the matter. He has not expressed commiserations with the families who lost their relatives. He has not indicated any preparedness to compel the security agencies to look into those killings with a view to punishing the culprits. He hasn't said that. Look at the issue of corruption. We know of corruption cases that have arisen. Some of them are so glaring, the evidence is there, and yet the president has not taken any action whatsoever against any of the people who belong to his government who engaged in this. We are talking about a president who in hard times, very difficult times, with all the difficulties that we are all experiencing, with all the cash crunch, that is making it impossible for government to meet its commitment in critical areas of the economy. The president decides to live lavishly. Apart from allocating billions of Ghana cedis, over 3 billion Ghana cedis to his office, he decides that despite our ownership of a presidential jet, which is fit for purpose, according to the defense minister, he will fly in an aircraft that costs $14,000 an hour. And despite public criticism, public demand for him to stop, he will not listen. He has remained obstinate and does not care a hoot about what you or I think about that particular matter. So there's hardly anything that is happening in this country that is desirable. And it is making the lives of Ghanaians very miserable.
Okay.
There does not appear to be hope on the horizon beyond getting rid of this government at the next opportunity, which is in 2024 when we go to vote. So really, my assessment of this government would be that those of us who warned or cautioned against electing President Akufo Addo stand vindicated today. It is unfortunate that we have to go through this hardship in order for people to appreciate the point.
Let's appreciate the hardship from,
Sure.
from the bread and butter issues.
Sure.
And we have something we've started here called the living standard, which paints the picture of what people are feeling when it comes to, you know, the kinky, the brudo, and other matters. And so let's talk about the E-levy. We have a budget, you know, projection for the 2022 fiscal year of 100.5 billion. Of course, that is a projection. We would have to do certain things to be able to raise that basket of money that we need. Kwakye Ofosu, the finance minister, has told us that out of the tax-paying, you know, bracket, those who should be paying taxes of about 18 million Ghanaians, you have only 2.4 million paying. That's a deficit of what? Just about 15.6 million. You look at the fact that in the town hall engagements that have been organized on the back of the E-levy, we have some of them talking about the fact that if you want better roads, we cannot give them to you unless you support the E-levy. If you want security, we cannot give that to you, as you keep complaining about happenings up north and in other parts of the country, unless you support the E-levy. We've had a member of parliament also, you know, speak to his constituents and say that free SHS will go if you don't support the E-levy. We also know the MPP has said that the E-levy will increase Ghana's tax to GDP ratio from 13% to a targeted 16%. How do you feel about this economic adjustment when it comes to the E-levy and the fact that without it, economically speaking, we're going to be doomed?
Well, I mean, the finance minister and his government are obviously dabbling in propaganda of the cheapest kind when it comes to the sort of things that they are saying. To begin with, we estimate that since 2017, this government has had access to about 400 billion Ghana cedis in taxpayers' money if you put all the sources together. If that amount has not been able for them to address all the problems that you highlight, what is 6 billion cedis going to do for them? So the moment you see these figures, you see that they are peddling on truths. They are not even respecting the people that they seek to govern, the people from whom they seek to take this money. E-levy,
if
at
you
most...
Consider, just briefly, if you consider the fact, and that's why I intentionally mentioned that out of the 100.5, it's a projection. Even if you look at, and Kojopoku pointed out that, you know, forcefully this morning in the course of the news review, you look at our debt requirements, debt servicing of about 30 billion projected. You look at the fact that we have our public sector wages, which is about another 30 billion. You see that we are in dire straits. And it is not surprising that Finance Minister Kwakye Ofosu says, UTAG and the rest, you are calling for all of these things. Genuine reasons, but we simply don't have the money.
But the point I'm making is that, first of all, Kwakye Ofosu, President Akufo Addo, and Dr. Bawumia, who in any event has disappeared from the economic discussion landscape because he's afraid that he will come under backlash if he spoke, must admit that they have mismanaged the affairs of this country and put us in this situation. Because if you've had access to 400 billion Ghana cedis over a period of 5 years, and you've squandered it, you are unable to point to any significant things that you've done with it, and you come around to tell us that you need 6 billion Ghana cedis this year to resolve every single problem that we have, then there's a major problem. Again, if you look at the budget figures, the figures that you mentioned, the truth is that E-levy will not resolve the problems we have. Out of the 100 billion and 500 million Ghana cedis that they only project to get. Indeed, some economic analysts, and rightly so, have predicted that that projection is overambitious and is not going to be achieved because they are seeking to increase revenue by 45% over the previous year's collection. They collected 57 billion last year. And they say this year they will collect 100.
And is it unrealistic? Because
it is unrealistic because they've not.
I mean, the GRA collected, like you rightly pointed out, it overshot its projection.
It is not, even that is not unusual. Over the years, they've done that. But the point is that they've not shown any underlying calculations that should give you or I any measure of confidence in the ability to meet that projection. They did that only because they wanted to artificially please investors. You know, the people who buy our bonds have lost total confidence in our economy.
That is not reflected in.
Well, if you allow me to explain. Well, but the ratings reflect it more than ever before.
Moody's has given us, but when it comes to S&P and Fitch, it's not the worst you could.
It's not true. Moody's
gave us a CAA1.
Yes, but it's not just Moody's. Fitch also downgraded us. And by the way, CAA1 is only 2 steps away from the worst.
My point, Felix, is that where we find ourselves when it comes to the S&P and Fitch ratings are not the worst ever.
Yeah, but
when it comes to Moody's, I can take that.
As far as Fitch is concerned, it's the worst ever in our history. They've downgraded us from B to B- with a stable outlook.
I'm saying that it is not the worst. It is not the worst ever in terms of its rating.
I'm saying
you're not getting me.
Yes.
It has a rating,
of course,
from let's say 8 to whatever. It's not the worst.
Let us be clear. Where we are is the worst ever rating we've received in 20 years. The ratings began in 2003 under President Akufo. These ratings are the worst ever in our history. So that alone points to a major deterioration of the economic environment. The second point is that even though they are just 1 or 2 steps away from the lowest ratings you can get, they are terrible. And they reflect the kind of loss of confidence that investors have in our economy. As I speak to you, since October 2021, we have been shut out of the international bond market. In the whole of 2022, we will not have access. We will not get a farthing from there. And some of the rating agencies believe that in 2023, the cycle will repeat itself. So government cannot look forward to getting any money from the international bond market. Now, if you look at the budget carefully, at Appendix 232, it shows that whereas this government claims that E-levy will reduce their borrowing, the budget shows that this year they intend to borrow 5 billion Ghana cedis on the bond market, international bond market. This will increase to 15 billion Ghana cedis in 2025. And E-levy is included in the calculations that government has made in its own budget in terms of its revenue expectations.
Right.
And yet it does not resolve the problem because all the 100 billion Ghana cedis that they project to get, even if they get it in the most optimistic scenario, all of it will go into just 3 items. Compensation, as you said. In any event, our interest payment is 45.3 billion Ghana cedis for this year. And we have gotten there because of excessive borrowing. In 2016, when President Akufo Addo, Dr. Bawumia especially, was all over the place, jumping from one platform to the other, grinning from year to year, and making mockery of the NDC, we only paid 10 billion Ghana cedis in interest. He said it was unheard of. But there has been a 500%.
Times have changed, of course.
But who changed the
dynamics are different.
Who changed the dynamics?
And we have COVID.
Who changed the dynamics?
Well,
COVID exacerbated a terrible situation. By 2019, our debt overhang had become unsustainable. Indeed, COVID, in my view, became a blessing for this government, even though it was a hardship to the people of Ghana. Because they got monies, they got a windfall that is unprecedented.
We're going to talk about
they got almost
of 33 billion.
They got 33 billion Ghana. No government has benefited from that kind of windfall. Indeed, look at our revenue shortfalls in the COVID year. It was just about 15 billion Ghana cedis. Yet they got 33 billion Ghana cedis, and yet they squandered it on electioneering with a view to winning the election. After that, they plunged us into a huge hole, a budget deficit of 15.7%, which is unprecedented. And coupled with the debt overhang, these two have ensured that we face the worst economic situation in the history of the Fourth Republic. So it is clear whose fault it is that we are in this hole. It is the fault of President Akufo Addo, Dr. Bawumia, Ken Ofori-Atta, and everybody else who is involved. And the prescriptions that they have put forward to addressing these are inadequate. It will not resolve any problem. Indeed, it will worsen our situation. Now, it is not the case, though, that Ghanaians have not made sacrifices already for this government. Mind you, in opposition, Dr. Bawumia, once again, and I repeat, he has disappeared from the economic discourse because he does not have the courage to face up to the reality of the situation that the economy has been mismanaged. He condemned taxation. He said that they were going to move from taxation to production, which meant that we were not going to be saddled with the level of taxation we are seeing today. Remember that since 2017, this government has introduced over 23 different tax handles and increased some of them. So if Ghanaians are resisting the E-levy, it is because there is taxation fatigue. Ghanaians have simply had enough. They are simply unable to afford any more taxes.
In a minute.
Sure.
And I want you to be very, very brutally honest, candid with all of us Ghanaians. Picture yourself and your party in this current situation. Without an E-levy, what would you do?
First of all, but we will not be in this situation.
No. So hypothetically, you are in this situation.
The point is that we have never been in this situation. We would never have gotten it.
You had critical issues.
Of course,
just picture yourself. And I pose that question. I pose that question, Felix, on the back of the fact that you say the E-levy is not the way to.
Yes, but it is not. If you look at
so if it isn't, what would you have done differently at a time like this?
Let me say it emphatically. We would never have gotten into this hole. You said we had Doomsaw, but we didn't have this situation. We didn't need E-levy when we were in Doomsaw. And if this government faced Doomsaw, this economy will collapse. In fact, it has already collapsed. But perhaps the situation will be much worse than we have today. They have not had Doomsaw and see the mess that they are involved in. Our General Secretary has made it clear that even in the unlikely event that E-levy ever gets through Parliament, we will scrap it. So we are clear in our minds that E-levy is not a panacea. We would never have gone for E-levy. You see, the problem that this government faces is that they want to live extravagantly. They want to live lavishly at a time when we are in economic difficulty. Let them cut expenditure. Let them cut out non-essential spending and focus on those aspects of our economic life that are absolutely critical. Let them rationalize expenditure based on revenue expectation. They cannot live a champagne life on an Akwateshi budget. That is essentially what the problem is. And we will not have
a champagne life on an Akwateshi budget.
You cannot have money that can only buy you Akwateshi and hope to live the life of somebody who drinks champagne. That is essentially the problem that we are having. Right. So everybody knows, every basic economic student knows that in times like this, what you go for are cuts in your expenditure in the areas that are not essential. But this government has loaded the budget with so much non-essential spending, and therefore is unable to meet the most important expenditures while sacrificing the most, critical ones. So we will first of all not have driven Ghanaians into, look, in 2020,
so your solutions are, I see you going back.
Just
but the question,
but you see, when
we don't have all the time.
Yes, but you see, when
but
you
I just want us to do this.
Sure,
I just want us to get into
I want to illustrate the point I'm making.
Right.
In 2016, there were elections. Our deficit was 6.1%. We could also have decided that we were going to spend beyond our means to win the election. We didn't do that. So that is a sign that we are a responsible party and that the leaders who manage the economy were responsive to the needs of the people. But they did not do what was not unnecessary in order to win elections. This government chose to do what was completely unnecessary in order to win elections, and they are here. So that is the difference between us and
what would you do differently? First
of all, the extravagance will go. The waste, the Auditor General has disclosed that up to 12 billion Ghana cedis has been lost.
We've heard.
In terms of real, like when we were in power, it was 780 million Ghana cedis.
Right.
Even that is unacceptable. So we would work to reduce that further. But you cannot have a situation where we are throwing 12 billion Ghana cedis down the line on an annual basis, and then you go and tax people. We will also ensure that the corruption that we are witnessing is abated. And then our policy prioritization will focus on those things that matter to the people in education, in health, in infrastructure provision, and social services that are absolutely necessary. We will not engage in fanciful political laced with propaganda,
just to wrap
sloganeering.
On the bit of the E-levy, before I cap off with you on the hardcore politics of breaking the 8. You hinted initially that even members of the majority were not in support of the E-levy. What makes you think that? I mean,
I don't get
does it?
Rephrase.
You made mention initially that even some members of their own fraternity are not in support of the E-levy. Do you feel that feeds into what is happening, for example, with the Kwakye Ofosu member of Parliament?
But that is the only explanation that one could offer. I mean, this is a government that says that its entire life depends on the E-levy. It is the be-all and end-all of everything that they need to do this year. Even though that is completely untrue based on the figures that they...
But do you feel that is why the likes of Sir Addo...
But otherwise, why is Addo Asafo clearly unwilling to participate in the passage of the E-levy? We in the NDC are certain that all 137 members of Parliament who represent us and their constituencies will vote against the E-levy without question. And they've demonstrated that on many occasions. They've gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure that it does not happen. But the NPP does not appear to even have the capacity to mobilize their members to pass the very thing that they say their lives depend on. Addo Asafo clearly is uninterested in this whole gambit, and therefore is unwilling to come down to participate in it. So, and I'm sure that if ever this E-levy was put to a secret vote in Parliament, there will be many that will vote against it. We've seen some conscientious members of the NPP vote against party positions in the past through the election of Speaker Bagwe. We all saw it. There was an NPP candidate, yet they voted for Speaker Bagwe. At least 2 or 3 of them voted in favor of Speaker Bagwe. So it shows that there are a few conscientious ones in there who will do the right thing if they did not have to live with the intimidation and harassment that will come.
So let's get on to this matter of, yes, you're going to face off with the NPP come election 2024 for the parliamentary elections, where I know you're going to hope to get many more parliamentary seats, and crucially in the presidential election. But the NPP sometime later this year is going to elect its flag bearer. Whom would you rather go against? And here I'm pitching the 2 major candidates that have come to the fore: Alan Tremantin or Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Whom do you feel would be better to go against, and whom do you fear?
The fact is that the NPP are going to engage in a race to the bottom. It's an ill-fated decision they will make. The point is that whoever they bring will lose. And they will lose because...
Will lose?
Yes.
Dr. Bawumia, for example,
he will lose.
Hold on. He will lose. To have excelled...
Excelled where?
In terms of the digitalization drive, that he's been very prominent, that in our 4th Republic, he's been one of the most vocal and effective and efficient vice president.
I have had occasion on another station to deflate and debunk that propaganda about his leadership of the digitalization drive. We don't have time, so I will not go into it. But the point is that what he is noted for, or his claim to fame in the past, was economic management. He has been so spectacular that he is running away from the very record that he has supervised. As head of the economic management team, he has supervised the worst economic situation under the 4th Republic. This will make him completely untenable as a candidate for the NPP. Exactly what is he going to tell the electorate? Who is going to take him seriously after all the falsehoods that he peddled have been revealed for what they are, falsehoods? The man does not even have the courage to step out there and defend his economic record. And people are saying that he's not a viable candidate. I'm not sure why people are even motivating him. You see, all you need to do in a campaign against him is to play his own voice. And that finishes the matter. You perhaps not even campaign.
Think Dr. Bawumia as flag bearer?
He will be a terrible candidate. He's a poor candidate.
He will be cool chop for the NDC.
Well, you see, we are not overconfident people. So we will not dismiss anybody we are up against. But the reality shows that Dr. Bawumia has no credibility as we speak. Nobody in the Ghanaian space takes him seriously beyond his own hype men.
Does Alan Tremantin have more credibility?
Alan Tremantin too is a member of the economic management team. So he is part and parcel of the catastrophic governance that we've seen over the period. So he cannot extricate himself
of the management team. So I mean,
no, but he's a member of the management. He's a member of the economic management team. He is trade minister, so he's a key participant in economic policy making for the NPP. So he cannot extricate himself from the terrible record that they will be living in 2024. So I don't see that he is a viable candidate either against who the NDC will present. So I would not want to be in the NPP's position. They are in perhaps the worst situation they've been in since they were founded. Both leading candidates do not inspire confidence. Their records are shambolic. Ghanaians have lost confidence in them. And some of the polls that I saw you discussing earlier on before I came on suggest a dramatic decline in the fortunes of the NPP, even within their own stronghold. So I am quite frankly surprised that nobody in the NPP is doing the analysis. Nobody in the NPP is looking at the numbers in a cold, calculated way to see what strategy best suits them. But they are going on hyping themselves and pretending that Ghanaians will all of a sudden forget this terrible, draconian situation they find themselves in and go and vote for whoever they present.
So point well made. Just to sum up, maybe in some 30 seconds, and it's a wrap. If you had to rate the Nana Addo Kwakye Ofosu administration in its 2nd term on a scale of 1 to 10,
oh, they've been exceptionally poor. They will get 2 for me. In fact, for the entire 5 years that they've been around, it's been 2 out of 10. It's been a complete disaster. He has exceeded my expectations, even as a critic. He has been so poor that I did not expect that he would be that poor, despite my opposition to him over the years.
All right. Yeah. Felix, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Felix Kwakye Ofosu, of course, former Deputy Minister of Information, joining the conversation. A very happy birthday to Wazaria Helena Issa of the KIA Port health. We wish you all the best of God on this special day. Wazaria Helena Issa of KIA Port Health. We wish you the very best. And once more to Captain Prince Kofi Addo being retired. Today's your 70th birthday. May you age with grace, and we wish you the very best. Well, this is how we cap off the conversation this morning on the AM show. It's always a pleasure. Let's reconnect same time tomorrow. But at 10 and at noon, we bring you our major bulletins of the day. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. Thank you for watching.